Okay, who's got the first question? Let's see. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Henrik.
Yes, there seems to be in many of these discussions an assumption that AI can be controlled in the future or can be designed in the present in a way that results in a certain AI in the future. And I wonder if a reflexive intelligence gets to a point of reflecting, if it starts, then I'm thinking it will start to diversify, and whichever is most competitively successful will succeed, regardless of what we intend.
Well, Steve Omohundro, I think, answered that question pretty well. A expected utility maximizer will never choose to modify or throw away its own utility function. It has no need for evolution by random variation and selection because it can do intelligent self-modification. It has no motive to diversify, especially no motive to diversify in ways that throw away its utility function, unless, of course, the utility function was built to value diversity, which is a moral issue, not an economic issue. So I think that there are possibilities in mind design space that don't run into that particular problem. I'll put it that way. It's a big space. There's possibilities for a lot of things in there.
I fundamentally disagree. I think that self-will, self-interest is intrinsically implicated when you have self-awareness. And so the degree to which we create self-aware, sentient, conscious beings, they will want to perpetuate their own interests and then develop their own, develop those plans over time. And the only way that we can control individuals or organizations that have self-interest that could run away and crush other people is through acts of collective security. We create police forces, we create militaries, we create United Nations, we create diplomacy. And that's the kind of system that we have to imagine for the future. There will be very powerful humans, post-humans, AIs in the future. And the only thing that's going to hold them in check, the only thing we can guarantee to hold them in check, is systems of collective security and not coding them from, in 2030 with good, friendly AI.
Okay, let's just move on to the next question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. In the book Gödel Escherbach, he talks about how self-reference, even in systems with no actual meaning, random numbers and things like that, actually perpetuate meaning and how it can have self-relevance. And I was wondering if that has any relevance to what we're talking about in computers where we're talking about ones and zeros.
Well, I tend to see relevance as coming from entanglement with the environment rather than any strictly internal property. Self-reference, though, is a very useful idiom for building very powerful AIs. We just don't quite know how to use it yet.
I have a question for you, Christine. See, what do you think people should be, for example, at Singularity Institute and others like us, individuals like Steve Omohundro, many of the researchers here today, what all do you think we should be doing to better prepare for these potential changes, these potential technologies? What are a couple of the core things that you see not being done, at least not being done as well as you would like to see?
Well, I have to say I'm not an expert at artificial intelligence per se. I come more out of the nanotech space.
Sure.
I think I'd have to agree with some of the speakers who pointed out that, well, this could be dangerous, and it isn't the case that we want to, it's possibly not the case that you want to go as fast as possible. But on the other hand, I have to admit that that this is a global issue. There's a congressman who's spoken at Foresight and who's concerned about AI, very concerned, and he's a bright guy. I would bet he's one of the smarter congressmen that we have. And he's very worried. But the way he dealt with it was he wrote a letter to DARPA telling them to stop doing AI research.
This is Brad Sherman.
Oh,
yeah.
He gave a name.
I'm giving them away, yeah, absolutely.
Openness, all right. Openness, transparency, right.
Yeah.
So I think Brad's, I think he's got some good points, but I keep trying to get him to come to this darn conference because clearly,
we try to get him.
That's like a top-down approach. Write a letter to DARPA and tell them to not do it. But that's, it's not DARPA who's going to. I mean, I think it's these little efforts
Yeah.
that are going to succeed. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just a feeling. I think one of these little efforts is going to succeed. But whoever is doing that, my God, what a responsibility.
Right.
And you'd better collaborate with the rest of us about this, or we have a disaster.
Yeah,
I just want to respond to that. My field's bio, and so I've looked a lot at bioterrorism regulations, things like that. And I challenged Jemay, actually. I saw a preprint of his talk, and I said, look, Jemay, open source sounds great, but and some of the comments that you would have made about open source, but what about open source bioterrorism? Why should only superpowers have access to bioterrorism? Let's all participate in creating bioterrorism. And there are certain things. Jemay said, well, bioterrorism is an example where the potential restriction of certain kinds of information might not make sense because there's dual use, and I think that that's true for nanotechnology. And that's not true for certain kinds of nuclear weapons construction information, for instance. So I think there may be ways to parse out places in which the only potential regulatory solution is an open source solution where we have to have maximum openness, which actually challenges what Bill Joy and Kurzweil said about the flu genome, which 6 months after it was published, there actually was a vaccine for that flu genome, and that wouldn't have happened as quickly, at any rate, with Kurzweil and Bill Joy being successful at banning that flu genome.
You're talking about the op-ed they did in the New York Times?
Right, where they said that, Kurzweil, it's kind of funny. I mean, he says, yes, there's apocalyptic risks of AI, but I don't want to talk about any regulatory solution. There's nothing pro-regulatory in the entire Singularity is near. And the only time he talks about a regulatory agency is when he says that the FDA kills millions of people because it bans drugs. But then, 6 months later, he's for banning the release of information about the 1918 flu genome because bioterrorists could use it, and then immediately it was used to create a vaccine. So that's an example where openness actually did work in our favor, but I don't think that the same thing could be said for publishing, A-bomb plans on the internet.
Although I would like to point out that while you talk a lot, it seems to me that the advocates of political solutions will say that, yes, it's possible for politics to have a bad outcome, but they don't discuss these bad outcomes, bad political outcomes in detail, or how to prevent them, which is, of course, the same thing you accused us technical people of.
Yeah, at the mic.
Hi. Someone raised the issue yesterday of the necessity of democracy if this is to be accepted, that the singularity wouldn't happen or wouldn't be accepted unless a much larger number of people than the people in this room gave input to it. And that made me think that intelligence is really something that comes as a result of collective action, different people in different places at different times thinking things and then meeting or having conferences or publishing papers and getting together, and that's what produces, I think, really intelligence. And that gave me the following thought. Might it be the case that to successfully have artificial general intelligence, that what's necessary is a sort of hardware democracy, that what we really need is different processors running slightly different sets of software, slightly different sets of data, coming to slightly different conclusions, and then talking with each other about what these conclusions were to reach an acceptable sort of congressional conclusion.
If we do build an artificial intelligence like that, it will probably be integrated at such a deep level that from the outside it just looks like one AI. That would be my guess. Well, I'm guessing what it will damn please to look like.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the question of friendly AI.
Who's this question directed to? Okay.
Or anyone else can comment.
Okay.
But it seems to me the idea of having the super AI track changing cultural human values, moral values, as you change from culture to culture, is a very difficult problem. It seems to me that it might be more direct to focus on not what it needs to track or what it needs to do, but what it ought not to do. And that kind of goes back to the concept of rights, which at least in their original form were based on the idea that because it's the nature of human beings, or the nature of animals, we don't talk about animal rights, there are certain things that it's unprobable to deprive them of. For human beings, because of our nature, it's unprobable, unreasonable to deprive human beings of their life and liberty. And it seems to me that for AI, build it in with the kind of, like you said, about
So the question is, could you program AIs using negative values, things not to do? And my answer to that one is that if you're trying to be lazy, which I think is very important, and you have a simple specification that uncompresses, it's going to be something like a mirror, and therefore it's going to mirror our positive and negative terminal values. Many of the prohibitions that you describe, we know are wrong because of the positive value that we attach to life and liberty and so on. So if you want to get these the lazy way, you need the positive values there to tell you what you should not do. May I suggest that we go to the microphones, and especially if there are questions for Christine and James?
Can I just make one response to that? I think that Marx in the Communist Manifesto says, communists come not to tell the workers what to do and what they want, but to only reveal to them what they are trying to achieve. And I think that this idea that a benevolent AI will be able to intuit all of our desires, synthesize them, and tell us what we want is going to work just about as well. It's a dream of benevolent despotism. Why is benevolent despotism? I don't think despotism turned out to work very well. I think only the thing that worked really well was the very, very messy and often dissatisfactory process of collective participatory democracy.
That was with humans. Humans are defective by design. We evolved to take over.
And the code will be pure.
Well, you can mock that idea all you like, but there's a vast range of possibilities out there. And for every AI you can design that will abuse power, I can design an AI that will not abuse power, that will react to political power by singing a little dance. There's a lot of possibilities out there.
This question is for everybody there. And I work for a security company, one of the biggest ones. And with regard to your comments on, absence of a distributed systems or protections or, multilateral type protections, I can tell you that most of the present leading security solutions actually utilize very strong multi-point behavioral detection. And my question is really about this. Maybe you're just looking for different things when you say that you haven't seen AI in multiple defense or protection systems. Maybe they're just called different ways. They're called behavioral technologies, and pardon me, we all know that AI had some kind of a stigma. That's why people rebranded and rephrased. So I know at least a dozen examples, and I don't want to take everybody's time here, where AI-like technologies are presently used in computer information security. So have you tried looking at under different names? And that's my question to all of you.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Any responses? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, final question.
Yes. Since AI is going to basically, if it happen hopefully in our world, which is dominated by forces like political parties and news media and pop culture and ethnic rivalries and wars, it seems to me that one of the best ways to ensure friendly AI is to focus on collective human intelligence. And that's basically using web-type techniques and other type of techniques to basically help encourage people think together well.
Okay, what's your
and
question?
low-level AI could actually be a facilitator in that process.
What level of AI could be a facilitator in that process?
I think electronic democracy and various ways of empowering citizenship through cognitive enhancement, it's something I addressed in Citizen Cyborg. There was a guy who had designed a couple of years ago a model for an AI, an expert system that would track your preferences against the preferences of various candidates, advise you on who to vote for, and then track whether the candidates were actually fulfilling their promises so that you could hold them accountable. It was just, it was kind of pie in the sky programming idea, but I think it was a good kind of future direction for how an empowered citizen might use an expert system.
Right, and I think that democracy to work well not only involves just voting, but it involves an intelligent public forum that basically helps rise up to the top the appropriate thoughts and has important discourse about them and basically enables appropriate forms of deliberation about them and prioritization.
The future cannot be shaped by planning whatever you are going to do anyway, by doing whatever you are going to do anyway. And in particular, collective intelligence as a way to help the singularity turn out well. Well, there's expected utility of marginal efforts. The rational amount of effort to allocate to this sort of collective effort-based thing is not zero. But on the other hand, where's the collective effort supposed to go? Hopefully into things like friendly AI research. So if you put all of your effort into these very normal, sane-sounding, short-term things and not the crazy long-term things, I think you're eating the seed corn. So while I would, say that the rational investment in that sort of thing is not zero, I would question whether, like, compared to the current amount of investment in that versus investment in this long-term, specifically singularity targeted stuff, I would sort of warn against letting it all be an excuse to look at what you were planning to do anyway.
Well,
Okay, we got to stop it. Okay, thanks everyone. Go ahead.
One last
Chris.
point. I don't think necessarily we need AI or even expert systems to do really wonderful argumentation systems. I've been really disappointed that maybe there are great argumentation systems out there, but I haven't seen them. We have a wonderful web system. Why don't we have really fantastic argumentation systems where you can really thrash these things out very visibly online?
Didn't you guys try to do something like that quite a while ago?
It was quite a while ago. I think the tools have improved so much now with social networking and all that. We need somebody to step up to this and do a really fabulous argumentation
There's not really anyone
system.
doing.
If there is, I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
A conference last year at Stanford, but that's a step. Online delivery. Okay, we should all look that up, and I'll do that. Thanks a lot, Barney.
Cool. Thanks everyone.